Hi, everybody. This is the study session meeting for the Campbell City Council. I call the meeting to order. Roll call, right? Is Andrea on? Deputy Clerk? She's on mute.
Yes.
Meeting for the Campbell City Council.
Councilmember Waterman.
Meeting to order. Roll call.
Okay, I'm here.
Councilmember Bybee. Present. Councilmember Resnikoff.
Here.
Vice Mayor Gibbons. Here. Mayor Landry.
Hi, here. All right, great.
Excuse me 1 second. Don't we have to read the whole intro about this kind of meeting?
Attorney Bill, do we need to read the whole note?
No, we do not.
No, okay. I'll just summarize. Basically, we are online per the recent orders. If you want to make a public comment, it needs to be submitted via email to clerks, CLERKS, office, OFFICE at campbellca.gov. If during the meeting, please submit your comments and put at the top for public comment and send it to the city clerk. Thank you. Now it says on the agenda to have public comment now. Do we need to do that right now? Andrea, do you have any public comments?
We did not receive any.
Okay, can we open that up later if people submit them? Bill?
Yes.
You can.
Yes, okay. All right, great. All right, so we're going to conduct our new business. This is the work plan update. It is discussion on strategies to address the economic impact of COVID-19 for fiscal year 2019-20 and fiscal year 20-21, and the review of the strategic plan priorities for both of those same years. Brian, are you starting?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Oh, wait, one real quick second, Brian. If we all keep our things on mute, and then if you raise your hands, that way, because there's a lag on everybody's voice, and that way we won't be cutting each other off. So I'm going to mute myself, Brian, and then you're.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. It's interesting to try study sessions in this format. So we're going to do our best. As the mayor stated, there's a lot of people on this virtual meeting. So best practice is to keep yourself muted. Once the mayor recognizes you, we'll give a few seconds for you to unmute yourself. We'll just be patient because it does take a few seconds with the lag in the audio. So I wanted to, just as a matter of housekeeping here, just make sure that everyone has the same information before them. And if you don't, we'll make sure that we either share our screen or email it to you now. And what was distributed with the packet was attachment 1A, which is the work plans and the updates of those work plans. This is the Excel spreadsheet with the dates that we were planning for milestones with the council. And then attachment 1B was just a quick summary of the priorities that were adopted last year from the council. And then since the packet was distributed, we also had desk items, and those are items C through I. Item C was recommended strategies for fiscal year 19 and 20. And attachment D is fiscal strategies for fiscal year 2021. Attachment E is a CIP, which is our capital improvement plan cash flow analysis with the projects listed and the cash flow for those. Attachment G is our general fund revenue estimates. Attachment H is the general fund reserves. Attachment I is kind of an outline of potential trigger points for budget corrections. And that's a kind of fill in the blank chart that we will, as we discussed today, kind of start filling in the blanks there. And then attachments J and K were not provided to the public. Those are sales tax estimates and revenue projections from sales tax. They were not provided because they contain confidential information that can be correlated to individual businesses. What we've committed to do for the public is that the percentage assumptions by sector we will provide to the public after this meeting and in future meetings so that the public can understand the assumptions that were made without the details of the sales tax correlated by company. So those should be all the attachments. There was an additional email that went to the council members for the executive session afterwards as well. So as I look around the screen, is everyone, can you nod if you've received all those or shake your head if you do not have those documents? Okay, so everyone nod. So I think we all have those documents. Will has prepared a PowerPoint for today to help walk us through the discussion. It's a little bit of a chicken or the egg because we want to certainly talk about priorities. We want to talk about work plans, but certainly those things are going to be impacted by the discussions on the budget strategies, both on a staffing level and on a supply and service level. So we've tried to organize this as best we can to try to address the issues. You'll see that the first part of the discussion is really a status update. And I will be providing that status update on attachment 1A. I've asked for the executive team to participate in that discussion on items that may be within their departments to provide greater detail to the council member on those updates. And then we're going to review the strategies in two different phases. One is the strategies and a discussion on fiscal year 1920 and provide feedback to staff. And then is to further review the strategies for the next fiscal year for 2021, and again, provide feedback to staff. And then we thought it would be best at that point to circle back to the strategic plan and get some council input and feedback on the strategic plan, both to the completion of this fiscal year and looking forward to next fiscal year. What we had intended to do with this is then take this discussion on all of these issues and develop a little bit more well thought out work plans for next fiscal year. And those will be shared with the council and the public at the beginning of the May 22nd budget study session before we get into the CIP and the operating budget discussions on the 22nd. So with that, I did want to highlight, if you want to look at attachment 1A in the packet. And let me get myself back to where I need to be here.
While you're doing that, Cecil, I'm seeing everybody's, but I don't get when the person's talking one big picture. So when the slides come up, it would show up small, right?
Yeah, so if you look up the right upper right-hand corner, there's a speaker's view.
Yes.
Go ahead and select
Okay,
that.
there we go. Thank you.
Okay, so looking at attachment 1A, the spreadsheet with the significant work plan items and what we've completed to date. And it starts off with my department and the city manager's office. You can see, and I don't need to read all of these to you, but at the top of the document, there's several things that have been completed. They include the Rosemary Parking Permit Pilot Program, the transition to district-based elections.
Hey, Brian, did you want for me to present that on the screen for you? To show that?
Please.
Okay.
All right, so Cecil's now sharing his screen. Cecil, can you enlarge that so we can see it a little bit better? Maybe, there you go. Is everyone able to read that okay? A little bit larger? There we go. Thank you. All right, so we've completed the Rosemary Parking Permit Pilot Program. We have completed transition to district-based elections, the water tower and flag policies. And of course, we completed the carpenter's side letter that was related to the labor negotiations with the carpenters group. Measure O was a significant priority of the council, as everyone probably is aware. And we've done some significant things with that, and I want to update you with where we have left to go with that. We've done our initial tax levy for the public last July. That is an annual thing that we will do for probably the next 29 years of this. Every year when we do property tax assessments, it requires an authorization from the city council to do so. That's typically done in the July-August timeframe. So although we did a tax levy last year for the current fiscal year, I see Council Member Gibbons has a question.
Liz?
I just put my hand up. I can interrupt you. This is what I wanted to ask on though. Is that all right to do it now?
Yeah, I had a question also. Go ahead.
Well, you and I probably have the same question.
Is that about the $10 versus the 19?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'll get to that. Bear with me.
okay.
You're about a half a step ahead of me. So last year we did a tax levy authorization for the current fiscal year. That amount was set fairly low because we weren't expending money yet, but that we had planned to during the current fiscal year. We are planning to come back to the council in July timeframe this year to ask for another tax levy authorization for the next fiscal year. And we're working with our consultant on that amount. But that amount will be based on several different factors that we've got to weigh into account. One is the average amount of assessment that we've promised the taxpayers, the maximum amount of assessment that we promised to the taxpayers, and then, of course, the amount of revenue that we need to generate to be able to hit our $50 million bond level. We don't know yet, and Will, you can jump in here, what that tax levy dollar amount will be this year. We anticipate it will be slightly higher than what was set last year, but it will be within the constraints that was proposed to the voters. Will, do you have more specific numbers on those?
So I don't at the current time. The amount of the tax rate that we take to council in July, it will be set and proposed at a rate that would support the payment of any anticipated debt that we are set to issue come August, and then it could change in the future, dependent upon any additional debt that we issue, and the debt payments each year to pay off the debt.
Thank you, Will. And so we do anticipate going to the council. If you look in the right column under the authorization to sell bonds, set tax levy in red text, that we are anticipating going to the council July 21st to both set the levy and begin to anticipate the issuance of bonds and potentially authorizes the issuance of those bonds for August of this year. As of this date, the city has not issued any debt. We've only done the one property tax assessment. This August would be the time period that we had anticipated selling the first set of bonds. And that's indicated there on the right hand in red. And then, of course, going further down, also in red, the final sales results will be reported to the council. We anticipate tentatively in September of this year, once those bonds are sold. And then following up with that on Measure O in the fall, also the need to consider and make appointments for our oversight committee with anticipation of that first oversight board meeting being potentially in January 2021. Is there other questions on Measure O before I move on? I see Liz nodding her head.
Yes, I still have my hand up. Susan, do you want to ask your question first? You're muted, Susan.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing as many people up on the, I have to keep scrolling back and forth. My question isn't on Measure O right now. Liz, do you have one?
Yes. So I've had discussions with the mayor on this, and just for my correctness here, we authorized for 1 year the collection of the taxes for the bond. Did we allow the $19 per 100,000 full amount for 1 year? And how much did we collect? Or did we authorize less?
Brian?
Thank you, Liz, for that question. The amount was authorized less, and I'll pull up the exact amount. It was less than the $19 per 100,000. It was less than the $119 on average. I'll pull that up here in a moment.
So that was my understanding, that it was a smaller amount. We didn't levy the full amount. We levied a portion to cover only amount of money that we thought we were going to spend for the year, which my memory was $1 million or something, but I could easily be off on that.
Yeah, and Will can jump in. My understanding is the levy last year was intended to generate between $900,000 and $1 million. Is that correct, Will?
So I'm just pulling up the council report from July in 2019. But we did set the tax rate low up front to generate about $1 million over the course of 1920 to build up a cushion in anticipation of a debt
Right, and we were going
issuance.
to the interest rate. It was there to cover some expenses and to cover interest rate on a bond we thought we might go out for.
I was told it was $10 instead of the 19.
So thank you. I'm looking. It was intended to generate between $900,000 and $1 million, like I spoke on, and it was set at. I'm looking at the staff report right now. I apologize. It was set at $10 per $100,000 of assessment.
Thank you.
Okay, so when we go out, so I would just like to make that clear so that when we get into a discussion of the work plan for Measure O, we can come back to this. That's why I wanted to get it clear. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Hang on, Brian, when we're done talking, we put it on mute. Yep, great, thank you.
All right.
Go ahead.
And then the other key thing in the city manager's department for this last fiscal year was working on legislative updates and legislative advocacy principles. And we completed a recommendation to the council. The recommendation didn't necessarily go forward, but we did come up with some principles on to suggest to the council, and we will continue to monitor legislation. In the right-hand column, we've noted, just for the council's understanding, that the legislative session in California right now has been put on hold till at least May 4th, based on more recent news that's probably going to come out this week. That legislative session may be delayed even further this year. All right, so that is it for the significant work plan items for the city manager's department. At the pleasure of the council, we'll move on to community development.
Hang on, Brian. Liz has her hand up. Go ahead, Liz, you're on mute.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the point that I do think we need to complete the legislative guidelines and priorities.
We do or we do not?
We do.
Yes, I agree.
We need to do that. I do not consider it complete. And there is legislation already submitted that needs to be tracked. And there are other things that we're being requested to respond to. So I would recommend that we do that. And we may also want to use the legislative committee to address some of the work exceptions in the emergency ordinance. We're being asked to consider supporting some applications to be considered essential services.
So can we start creating a list of these questions and comments that are coming up so we can finish what we're doing and then we can come back to specific comments?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll take notes on these. We had planned for this just to kind of be an update, and then I'll make notes of the comments, certainly. And then after we get through the fiscal strategies, we'll circle back on recommendations, both for completing this fiscal year's strategic plan and then moving forward. So Council Member Vice Mayor Gibbons, I'll note those two things for that discussion for sure. All right, so next is community development. Paul, do we have you on the line?
Yes.
All right. Do you want to kind of walk us through community development department's work programs, please?
Yes, I'll do that. So the ADU ordinance revisions were successfully updated and approved by the council. The second item is the downtown C3 zoning update. It's inaccurate where it says ordinance adopted. We've prepared the changes. We just need to schedule a meeting, a public hearing to actually complete that process and get the C3 zoning updated. The regional housing needs assessment sub-region formation didn't go too well for this area and was abandoned. And in place, we agreed to form a planning collaborative, and those meetings are being conducted, but not entirely, because they seem to be focusing more on COVID-19. I had a meeting with the two reps that are the consultants that are leading this group yesterday, and discussed the need to get back on track, and let's talk about housing collaboration and how we can maybe hopefully create best practices or what have you in terms of advancing our housing visions. But right now they seem to be stuck on COVID-19 and rightfully so. Can I move on to general plan, or are there any questions on those three, Madam Vice Mayor?
Oh, wait, I'm unmuted. Sorry, I have comments. The MTC is on a fast track and still moving forward. They are coming out, I don't know if it's this week, next week, or the following week with new RENA numbers. I think Liz has more information, but I have sent requests after meeting the governor last week about why isn't MTC slowing down and allowing us time to be able to address these issues, and don't get back to me. So I think Liz has more of when the actual dates are. So Brian, can we write this down as one of our topics and then we can keep going down this list?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, Paul.
I would just say that the mayor's correct that things are moving very rapidly. And the Plan 2050 with the diagrams that show 2/3 of the city is Campbell is being eligible for, what do you call it? PPA.
PDA.
Is on the boards, and there is tables. I've sent all of this to Brian and Paul. This is a critical path because these numbers and projections are going to tie into the RENA numbers. So I'd like to come back to a discussion of that when we get into the work plans.
Okay, so we got that on Brian's list.
Can I just provide some clarification on the RENA?
Yes.
So the RENA hasn't been created yet. There's a housing methodology committee that's made up of different members of every county in the COG. And they're still trying to come up with the methodology needed to create the methodology, the RENA. In fact, I don't even believe HCD has given the ABAG, this COG, the state's numbers yet. That's probably to come. So they're still trying to create the methodology. Plan Bay Area 2050, certainly as the Vice Mayor implied, will be related to that. There is a relationship. And it's not uncommon for ABAG to do forward planning. I mean, they've identified Winchester Boulevard as a future PDA for the 10 years. We don't have to accept that fact. In fact, they've even identified, the town of Los Gatos as having a PDA in their downtown. They don't have to accept that fact. So it's not forced on us. They're just trying to help us or maybe help them. So there's a lot to this, and there's more to come. So
this is Rich. Is it all right if I speak on this?
Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
Yeah,
So
I mean, we can.
are-
What's that?
Oh, I said we put it on our list for more further discussion. I was hoping we could go down the spreadsheet and then we'll get into it unless you have a quick comment, Rich.
I mean, I just agreed certainly with Paul. We've had these kinds of things a million times before. Let's tread very carefully on these type of things. I'm sure we'll have more today. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on
Back
to
to Brian, Paul.
the general plan, Madam Mayor.
Yep.
Okay, so I've been in conversation with the consultant. We have the admin draft general plan right now. I'm reviewing it. I've sent it to each department head and the city manager to review. I've provided instruction not to change any policy because these were created by the GPAC and the consultant. Rather, if each department head feels that there are inconsistencies with historical practices or inconsistencies between policies, let's flag them and note them. We're being really careful not to put ourselves in a position where we're going to make the call because after all, this is the GPAC and consultant. The consultant is anticipating this going to the council for final decision December of this year. Definitely to the city council in July. So now you can look at the admin draft. So it's anticipated to be completed this year, assuming the council still wants it to be completed. Can I move on?
Okay, so I want to add this to our list, Brian, about a general plan. One, I don't see how you can get an EIR completely done. I want to know who's doing the EIR. And we want to discuss housing as it relates because the 5 years since it started has come up. So can we please put this on our list and then Paul can keep going? Thank you.
The housing objective standards, long-term, the last time we reported to you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, we had entered into an agreement with RRM. However, when we had our kickoff meeting, it became painfully transparent that they had other ideas that weren't conveyed in the agreement, which meant they were only going to focus on mixed-use developments when their proposal in our agreement said that they would be focusing on all residential development. So we ended that agreement with them, and we're now deciding between two other consultants, or actually three other consultants. One we kind of felt wouldn't be appropriate, so we have two that we still need to decide on. The funds, as you know, are from SB2 grant, so it's not coming out of the general fund. It's coming out of free money from the state. So that's the long term. On the short term, Stephen and I and Cindy McCormick, who's no longer with us, we completed draft ordinances for the short term. Those were completed between August and November of last year. The city attorney has reviewed most of them. Still some are remaining to be reviewed.
Actually, Paul, if I can jump in, they were all reviewed as of the end of March.
Of this year. Okay,
Yes.
So we have them back now. Okay. So our job now is to take a look at city attorney's comments, incorporate any revisions, and then decide if the city council wants to go ahead with the short term or hold off and just wait for long-term standards. We can give you an update. I think the short-term standards will feed into long-term resolutions. So maybe they go hand in hand. That will be determined by you. Can I move on? Next, is there a next slide?
Looks like we have a question from Vice Mayor Gibbons.
Yep.
Okay.
Does anything on the change of contract need to come back to council?
No, there's no changes to the contract. Your authorization to enter a contract, there's not.
Paul, you skipped over the camping before you went to the next page. It says here moved. I thought we approved the camping ordinance.
We did, however, there's supposedly some follow-up to allow overnight stays in the public facility zone districts, and that's mainly the churches. They have the Safe Park programs, and this is a way to, more formally codify allowances for their programs. I worked with Dan Furtado to allow it at St. Lucy's, and this is a way to more formally allow it without interpreting the code.
Okay.
And if I can just jump in there again, what we've done at this point is the ordinance allows anyone and any public facility zoned property to have a safe parking program. What we're looking at is allowing that to expand to assembly uses outside of the public facility district through a use permit requirement.
Okay, and I see Council Member or Vice Mayor Liz. Liz, you had a question.
Bill just answered it.
Okay, thank you. Paul, back to you, I guess, or Brian.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, I'm sorry. I can't see everybody's picture all at once. Who is it, Ann?
Yeah, it's Councilmember.
Okay.
Could I ask, I guess I need clarification. I didn't understand the contract issue with, I believe it was the long-term health standards and the consulting?
objective criteria.
So could you clarify that, Paul? Did you say that the consultant that was hired is not going to perform the duties and now you have to get a second consultant?
Right, we entered into a contract with a firm, and as part of the beginning of any process, you have a kickoff meeting. And at that meeting, it was understood that they were only going to do so much in terms of their commitment to the project, even though their proposal said that they would be working on all residential. So we got into a discussion. We felt we couldn't turn it around. Therefore, we parted ways, no harm, no foul. And now we're considering the other proposals that were submitted at the initial RFP distribution.
So we'll be entering into a new agreement with a different consultant then.
Exactly.
Process will continue.
The process will continue.
Okay.
And have we spent any money on them to date? Have they, did they receive any money?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Any
Good, Brian.
quick question to Cecil? I can't see everybody's picture, so I have to keep scrolling back and forth. Is there a way to get everybody's picture so I can see hands that are up?
There is, yeah. So if you're in, you can toggle between speakers view and there's kind of like a Brady Bunch view. If you look in the upper right-hand corner and kind of play with those controls.
Cecil?
Yeah.
Cecil, I had that question at the beginning though. Isn't there a way just to allow us to put our, have like a speaker thing at the side where we can post questions and it could be.
Yeah, down in the middle, it says Q&A.
There is.
Otherwise this 4 hours is going to get really rough.
Yeah, I know.
Anymore. Yeah. See, like right now, I just, as things get more intense, it's going to be hard to work it out this way. And certain council member or two is going to do a lot of the talking. So we need, if there's a way to, have a queue or something, can we do that?
We can. We didn't set it up for this meeting, but it's in the Q&A would work exactly, or at least do exactly as you asked.
All right. Okay. So if I have a question, I would just go to Q&A at the bottom.
Yeah, but unfortunately, if you try that, you won't see any options available. I removed those just to be ultra conservative. Next time, of course, we can turn those on.
So you're saying it won't work this time?
That's correct. That is correct.
And we just shake our hand. Okay.
Okay, I can't find, I'm sorry, you guys, I cannot find where I can see everybody's pictures. You said in the upper right-hand, it says swap shared screen with video, and then I show up. I want to be able to see everybody's little picture like I did in the beginning.
Oh, okay.
There's a gallery view at the top.
Gallery?
Yeah, that's what you want, gallery
It's
view.
like a tic-tac-toe board next to exit full screen. Top right.
Madam Mayor,
Top right.
if I may, really quickly, on the right-hand side, if you're seeing the scroll bar of photos, if you find the line between the share screen option and that, you can drag that over and then put it into gallery view on the right side, and it'll show up more of the photos or video pictures and make your share screen just a little bit smaller.
Okay, mine are across the top and I only have 5 at a time. And I have to keep arrowing back and forth to get people to show. It's whoever talks last is in the order of the pictures. So it's not on the side, it's on the top. I have view options, zoom ratio, and side by side. I don't see where it was in the beginning.
So you're looking for an imaginary line between the share screen and the photos, and you should get a plus sign that has 2 arrows on one of the sides. No, you're not getting that?
It's at the top. I'm looking everywhere. I don't see that as a, up at the top it says view options, view ratio, zoom ratio, side by side. Now you're on the side. Now where do I go? It says speaker.
There's like a double bar in the middle.
Take your mouse and hover right between the gallery images and
there
your
you
share
go.
screen.
Got it. Thanks. Got it. Thank you. Okay, now I can see everybody. Thank you. Keep going.
Okay, I think that completes us with the Community Development Department. Finance Department is next up. Will, you want to cover these?
I can, and thank you, council. I'll just go through the finance department updates quickly. Our great team in the departments, we've accomplished a lot over the course of the year to achieve council's objectives. We've taken an updated a table to council to comply with the KILPERS requirements. We also posted the pay table onto our website as well. And then anytime in the future, when there are updates that need to be made to the pay table due to either contract adjustments or any other adjustments that council's approved, the comprehensive pay table update will also be taken to council in the future and also posted on our site. We just took to council the choice of a new audit firm, a company, and we're just about to execute the contract per the council's approval. We expect to begin an interim audit in June, and then do the complete final audit in the fall around October, and then complete our CAFR in December. We also gave a council an update on our payroll process in December of 19, and we're just about to begin the implementation of an e-timesheet program in May, and certainly during this time, when we've got people who work from home and who don't come into their job sites each day, the e-timesheet program will be helpful so that we're able to record a time when people are either on site or also if they telework at home. In regards to the general fund reserves, I'll be discussing a couple of the key ones today. I'll also be going through some proposed changes, and also how we could use the reserve accounts to address the fiscal concerns of COVID-19. We pushed off the review of the business license process a bit, but also because we aren't able right now to serve the public in a person and at our counters. We are also exploring different options so that companies and people could apply for a business licenses online, and also to do any payments of their fees as well. So I expect that if we are able to get anything in a place, we'll take a staged approach. But it's been pushed up a bit to account for the fact that we all need to change to this new world. I'll I I will also talk a bit today about pensions and OPEB, but I anticipate to come back to council next year, either in the fall or towards December, to discuss a plan about how to pay down our PERS and our OPEB costs. Dependent upon how a PERS ends the year in June, and if their investments don't meet their projected targets, then our CalPERS contribution rates could jump up in fiscal year 22-3. So we will for sure want to be on top of this and on top of this issue, and come up with a good, strong way to ensure that we both paid down our UAAL, and also to ensure that our future CalPERS contribution rates stay about the same. I will also come back to council in the next year to go through our sales tax audit process, and I anticipate that it will either be a report on a council agenda, or also it could be a memo as well. But I will do it in whatever a way that the council desires on that. And we'll also return to a council and get the help of the Public Works Department to assess our capital inventory, and to do a facilities condition assessment as well. So there still remains a lot that will be on our plate in the upcoming year, but we've truly accomplished a lot together in our department, and with the help of all departments over the past year. And I will take any questions.
Will, if I
sorry, Brian, Rich has a question.
Oh,
go ahead, Rich, and I'll follow up. I was gonna ask Will to follow up on the payroll processing. Will?
you knew what I was going to ask.
Okay, what's your question, Rich?
Well, I just to complete a thought, you said complete, but we've been talking about this for 8 years. It's an incredibly archaic system. I mean, just today, as Will knows and Brian now knows, I mean, I'm going to have to postpone my refinance for a month so I can somehow get pay stubs, blah, blah, blah. It's just an archaic system. I know you're going to say it's expensive to switch, but I got to believe it's a lot more expensive to stick with this DOS program we use now. We were supposed to get an analysis of it just about every year, and if the only thing we got out of that is electronic timesheets, we just wasted a lot of money. Anyway, we can talk about that later.
And I'll add to that, Will. I've been prevented from getting 2 jobs because my paycheck says I work an 80-hour in a pay period. And we get $396 after taxes, which comes out to like $3 an hour. So just because my pay sub says 80 hours. So that's something I'm writing this stuff down, what Rich just said. Brian, do you have any more comment?
I was just gonna, we are implementing some of the software that we have already, and I know it's archaic. Part of the problem is that our data isn't in a format that's easily transferable, and the hope was that by putting it into the existing system, at least converting to that electronic format, will make it easier for us to transition. Will, do you have updates, anything more on that you can add?
I do. We're about to put into place the timesheet program. We'll begin the implementation in May, and we expect that with implementation, testing, and training, that it could be all done by the end of June or into July. Also as a part of the timesheet program, we will also install a program that people are able to get copies of their pay stubs to change tax deductions, to get a copy of their W-2s. So we hope that by the program that we own today, that it will address many of the concerns that have been raised. It's not a perfect program, and I do agree that there are things that if we went to a new program that could be improved, and I had anticipated that we would put a needs review of a new accounting, HR, and payroll program into the upcoming proposed budget. But due to COVID and the need to contain a cost, I don't right now see the ability to do that type of review yet. But the timesheet program also the program to allow people to get their checks and W-2s should bridge the gap until we are able to replace our current payroll, accounting, and HR programs.
Okay, Brian, back to you, Brian.
All right, thank you. Try to keep moving here. With that, the next up is IT. I know, Cecil, you're working on something behind the scenes here. Are you with us to be able to describe to us what you've done?
I am. Yeah, I can go through this really quickly. A really great year. I think we've completed a lot of projects. Looking at the first one, the internal intranet was completed around the update of our external internet, and that continues to evolve. And we have scheduled meetings to continue to update that so that does not get stale. We also deployed the enterprise permit system, My Government Online. There was a lot of work to that, a lot of automation, including our GIS and mapping data, which is critical to not only the police department, but also the rest of the city, and also the automation and integration of payment processing through the internet. So people really don't physically need to come inside to make payment. We also did a complete full backup to the cloud. Why that is critically important is because if we were to lose the building or our data servers, we do have a complete copy of all of our data, and that is done in almost in real time, which means if you modified a document, 10 minutes later, it will be, or part of it will be updated to the cloud. We do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that is successfully deployed. We also provided Laserfish access to public documents. We sort of vetted through what documents we should just throw out there and allow the public to see, but it is there and it's available on the internet. Part and parcel that I'm going to take you to almost the last one. We're providing, replace city council, no, wrong one, deploy public access to Laserfish documents is also part of the PRA automation, Public Records Act automation. That was a tool that was included in the Laserfish product as we upgraded, and we simply deployed that tool to automate that process. We're working right now on the phone system. We're finalizing the RFP. We're in the best and final offer mode, which is make me the best deal possible. We went through the 3 levels of vetting the technology, not only to most of the heavy users of telephony, but also to the IT personnel that are looking at the behind the scenes to see if this thing is going to be future-proof, as I call it, and will take us 10 to 15 to 20 years into the future. We also provided public access to GIS mapping layers. We continue to build those mapping layers, and those are compelling. One of the things we'll do in future is to integrate those mapping layers with real-time or batch pictures of properties associated with properties that are being tracked in My Government Online, or developments being tracked there. And that is it. One of the ones that you'll see coming up would be the replacement of the technology that we use for recording and transmitting videos for public meetings. And that's been a long time coming, but that's on top of my list to complete.
Quick question, Cecil.
Sure.
There was a discussion of replacing the microphones and having maybe something where you can show the order of who hit the button first on the lights. Is that part of any of this?
Madam Mayor, it is absolutely part of it. And I've done this once before in a much more sophisticated system. But it even goes beyond the ability to see who raised their hand first or who's talking, who's up next, but also who's talking in the audience and how to focus the cameras automatically. And also,
okay, I didn't need a whole lot of detail. I just wanted to make sure it was in there. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Question?
You. Yeah, Rich?
Oh, sorry. So on that line, I mean, good question from the mayor, but we've also talked about not just City Hall, but, you know, some of the, obviously the banquet hall and some of the other places in the community center. I'm not at all saying this is a priority right now, obviously. But the issue of, you know, having cameras that people can videotape and hook their PCs up to and run video conferencing at different places throughout the city, especially the community center. But also, let's say the Deach Room is a good example of, because I think more people are going to be calling in the future. So we can have a meeting in the Deach Room where one person not only gets on the phone, but can see people on video. And it isn't sort of, I don't know if Paul Kamorian's still there, but Paul's a little cute, quirky camera that he has, but maybe it's more, are you smiling, Paul? I can't tell. Well, that kind of a, rather than a little camera, it would be a, you know, kind of a quasi-professional one with a chief and a mic, and people can call in, whether it's Zoom or something. So is there any I know we've talked about that, you and I, before, so I don't know if there's a way to get that on the, what do we call it, Susan, the parking?
Can we add that to our list, Brian, so we can
Yeah,
finish
and
this?
maybe that's next year or the year after.
Well, we have a running list that we're
Yeah.
adding to, so let's add that to the topic for later. And then,
Yeah.
because we have Public Works on the spreadsheet and Recreation, is that okay, Rich?
Say it again, Public Works and,
Well, I'm just saying, I wanted to get through this workloads list first, so
so that was IT, right?
Yeah, so your item on that, what you just talked about, Brian, you're adding that to the further discussion, okay? Great.
Video conferencing throughout, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So we're now back to Public Works, it looks like.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Capurso, are you there? You want to cover this for us, please? You're muted, Todd.
I thought I unmuted, but I think I put it right back on mute. So my apologies. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. As you can see from the first couple of items there, these are items that where we had gone to council before and gotten the appropriate council direction or approvals to move forward with our vehicle and equipment purchases much earlier in the fiscal year. We changed the methodology and how we collect our park impact fees for future residential development, and we did get guidance from the council on how we should approach MLAs, the master licensing agreements, and process small cell wireless agreements and permits in the future. So those are things that we have been completed up to this point. Things that remain on the major items that remain on our work plan largely pertain to open space. So parks and open space. So the first one that I'll talk about is the John D. Morgan All-Inclusive Project, which you have seen before. We've been to council on that early on to talk about a couple of different conceptual alternatives. And we got both your input and input from the Parks and Rec Commission, and we are working on bringing back a single preferred option that if scheduling holds true, and it looks very good at this point, you will see that on May 19th. And if there's concurrence on that, we would then move forward with plans and specs that hopefully would be completed in August and would go out to bid shortly thereafter. Campbell Park has kind of taken a back seat to John D. Morgan, not because it's less important, but largely because there's a grant timing constraint associated with the John D. Morgan project and not with the Campbell Park project. So we made the internal decision to let John D. Morgan move ahead so we could keep that on track. Campbell Park will kind of run right behind it on the schedule. Like John D. Morgan, you have already seen some early couple of conceptual designs, and our plan is to bring you back hopefully a preferred option based on both your input and the Parks and Rec Commission in August. And then we would look for council approval of plans and specs probably a couple months after John D. Morgan, and then we would have to have a conversation about the construction schedule, because it may not make sense to have both, to have John D. Morgan and Campbell Park under construction simultaneously, since they're two of our more popular parks. So we may choose to defer the construction of Campbell Park based on how John D. Morgan plays out. Also want to touch on the East Campbell Avenue plan line that you had seen at one point, and we had a pretty thorough discussion about that. Got lots of council input. You ultimately granted us approval to issue the RFP, which we did. We selected a preferred consultant. And just as we were in negotiations and getting ready to enter into a contract, we entered this stay-at-home order and all of the uncertainty around it. So we have put that project on hold. We did not ink in the contract. So we're holding that pending on where we go with our overall budget outlook. That may be a project that we decide to enter into anyway, or that may be one that we put on hold indefinitely or somewhere in between. So that'll no doubt be part of our our CIP discussion as we move forward. And then also wanted to touch on the efforts to update our standard specs and details. It says on the spreadsheet that is moved to the fiscal year 21 work plan. I would say that it's more accurate to say that it's being continued, because we have been doing work internal to Public Works. We have been working on the detail sheets for all sorts of items, ranging from street construction to planting details, to landscaping details, to traffic signal details, and then working in conjunction with the attorney's office on the specs. And part of the I won't say difficulty, but there's a fair piece of work going on here in how do we reference Caltrans specs, because there are basically two versions of Caltrans specs out there, and there's pluses and minuses of each one. And so as we move this effort forward, we're going to have to land on one. And then our goal is to minimize references to outside standard specs and details wherever possible. But there will no doubt have to be some that remain in ours. And so we will continue to work through that into the next fiscal year. Thank you.
I'm going to raise my hand so you know I have a question.
Well, you're the mayor. You can ask anytime you want.
I was trying not to interrupt you. We said we were going to have this done before the police and library go out to bid. Are we on track for that?
We said what?
Well, I thought our previous discussion was that we did not want to go out to construction contracts for the police and library till we got this resolved. Or will we make that?
I believe that we will.
Okay, thank you. Keep going. Oh, wait, I see council. I got Rich first.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know whether, are you finished, Director Caberso?
No, he still
I'm
has
finished
more.
with talking. I'm happy to answer questions.
Oh, I thought you had more. Okay, Rich, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. So this is definitely not something I want to do, but the question obviously may come out in the next day, month, or year with respect to the J.D. Morgan playground. I don't know if we've had any kind of preliminary talks with the county, or perhaps they may even come to us saying, let's postpone it a little. I mean, we don't want to be, with all the issues, we don't want to be spending $1 million. They very well may not want to be spending $1 million. Is there any kind of feelers on that? Or do you have any feeling that they're just going to go, no way, that's the end of it? Or they would say, yeah, it'd be a good idea for both of us just to wait. Not that but I'm not saying I'm in favor of it.
No, that's a very good question. And I will say that in general, we've reached out to multiple granting agencies on other projects and asked some very similar questions. With regard to the county specifically, we have reached out to the county. This is County Parks and Rec specifically, and they are holding to the grant. We do have an executed grant agreement with the county. They're holding to that, and they're also holding us to the schedule. So if we choose to move forward and would like to exercise our grant, which is upwards of $1 million, right, we will need to do it on schedule and need to retain our match. Of course, if there's direction for us to either defer or maybe even cancel out of that project, we could do so, but we would be we'd probably be giving up the $1 million grant. But to date, they have not indicated any changes to the funding source, funding availability, or the timeline with regard to this grant program.
A follow-up question. They're on schedule though, right? Do we have till the end of 21 to build?
Yes, we are on schedule. Right now,
they have not been put on hold. They have been moving forward.
Our project is moving forward, and we are currently on schedule, correct.
Great, thank you very much. That's great. I see Councilmember Gibbons, or Vice Mayor.
Okay. Does everyone know that they can raise their hand under the participant thing? So you can call people by that, because I
don't see that. Let's stick with what I'm trying. I see everybody now to wave their hand at me.
Okay. A couple of things. One is I wanted to clarify that when you're redoing the plans and specs, you're also redoing the standard contract. We found that when we were doing the Measure O, that the standard contract needed help. So I think that needs to be involved prior to the Measure O projects going out to bid.
Okay.
If I can,
Two is the infamous Santa Mas Creek Trail is not on your list, and that does consume staff time.
It does. So I should stop right there because I think I thought I heard Bill wanting to chime in about the contract. So if that's, I'll let him do that first, and then I'll come back around to the Santa Mas issue.
yeah, but the contract for public works projects, the construction contract is an entirely different contract from the contract for design that you had previously seen. And I think that's what you were alluding to. It does need to be updated as well, and that would be part of the update of the standard specifications.
Yeah, the reason I mentioned it is because we had some claims, and we didn't have a lot of language in the contract to assist us when there were claims. So I was trying to take advantage of lessons learned.
Thank you. So now we're on to recreation.
I need to come back in just to chime in
sorry.
on the Santa Mas Aquino Creek Trail. There actually are several other projects that we continue to work on that were approved in previous fiscal years that you don't see on this document, either because they had prior council approval or council had provided a previous direction. And so the council touch points were not so well defined. So in addition to the Santa Mas Creek Trail, I'll give you another example is that the Winchester repaving project is not shown on this list. And that will be that's actually out. Technically it's under construction, even though you don't see construction. We're at the period of reviewing submittals. And so that's a project that you will actually physically see work start back up relatively soon. There is not another council anticipated touch point for that project. The same is not true of the Santa Mas Aquino Creek Trail, in that the council had provided us some previous direction on things to look for and questions that you wanted to see answered before we come back to you. And you're right, Vice Mayor, that has taken a little bit of staff time and a little bit of consultant time that we have charged off to the grant and to the funding sources. 2 of the 3 were external funding sources, by the way. But the status of that project does need to come back to council. We have not penciled that in with a date yet, but my sense is that it would be in the August-September timeframe. And so once we can give you a firm date on that, we will get that and we'll come back to you to update that. And there'll be a decision point for you at that point.
I'd like a clarification question, Brian. I thought that every single project we're working on was going to be on these lists.
This list is just significant work plan items that had touch points with the council.
Okay, so that's not my understanding, because something like the Santa Mas Aquino Creek Trail, we don't have money to build that one. I thought that went on hold. So my understanding was we were going to get all projects that they're working on.
So we will, excuse me a second, when we come to you with the CIP budget study session, May 22nd, we plan to go through all of those existing CIP projects in detail, including that one, and get direction from the council. This is simply just our significant work plan and priority items.
Okay, but we're going to have a discussion later about our staff and funding. And I thought that was why all of these projects, because if we're taking staff time on other projects, we should be knowing about it prior to May 22nd.
I'll take a note and make sure that Santa Mas is on that list of follow-up items.
Okay, all of them, not just council touch points, please. Liz, is that done with your questions? Yes, okay. So now are we on to recreation? Oh no, I see Council Bybee on here. Hi, Ann, your turn.
Todd, if I may ask a follow-up question to the Winchester resurfacing project.
Go ahead.
Is Todd
I'm
there?
here. Yes.
As I recall, a portion of that project towards Los Gatos and Knowles was being funded by Town of Los Gatos.
That is correct.
And so what, have you been in any conversations with the Town of Los Gatos as to their ability to move forward with that project, or what is their funding availability?
Yes. As you may recall from the very convoluted funding plan that we put together for council, this project actually involves a collection of funds from a variety of funding sources. There's actually very little City of Campbell money in on this, but we have verified the funding from all funding sources, including the Town of Los Gatos, and they are good moving forward. We have a funding agreement in place, and this really only is a small portion of Winchester in the southern end of the city, where there's kind of a shared center line. So the goal there is to have a single uniform endpoint for the project rather than pave half the street. It's really not a significant portion of the street, but their funding has been recommitted.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Vice Mayor Gibbons.
Thank you for that question and answer. Is the funding for that project related to Measure B or any other sales tax or funding mechanism that might be at risk?
I guess there's two ways to answer that. I think some of the funding mechanisms like Measure B and SB1 might need to be evaluated for future projects, but this is actually using previous year's funding. So this is previous year's funding from both SB1, VTA Measure B, and some through the OBAG, the One Bay Area Grant Program. So we are secure with the funding that we have, but I think in proposing projects going forward, we will need to take a closer look at those funding sources and the corresponding projections.
Okay, any more questions on that? Now we're on the rec, right?
All right, good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of council. So for recreation, we completed the CIC beautification grant program with the Civic Improvement Commission, the neighborhood grant requirements, as well as the street naming criteria. This was a stretch assignment for one of our supervisors, Tina Wong Erling, in the Adult Center last year to oversee the Civic Improvement Commission. So those work plans were completed by her during that time. The recreation software, we've been working with Cecil to execute that RFP. We're in the last stages of finalizing a contract with a new vendor. This new vendor will provide hard pricing on an annual basis versus it being based as a percentage of our revenues as we currently do. So it'll allow us to budget more appropriately on an annual basis and know exactly the cost of it. It'll also bring in the processing of all of our credit cards in-house and not being done through a third party where we lack control of the costs associated with that. So we are in a wrapping up of that and hopefully transitioning over to the new software and hopefully saving some money with the new software system. The leasing policy update was done in November to kind of make some changes to thresholds that triggered closed executive sessions with council. For the Parkland Dedication Fund, the annual update. So we brought this to PRC in March in conjunction with potential CIP projects as just an FYI to them, but in working with Will, that this seems most appropriately done with the CIP. And so this one will be discussed when we go over the CIP projects proposed during that time. It seemed out of order the way we had been doing it previously. And so we'll be working to present that in the next month. The field use policy we brought to PRC in February for them to review. And this one, because of the fee schedule that's attached to it, as well as the building use policy, we thought it was best to bring those when the fee schedule is coming. So it's like the chicken and the egg to kind of figure out if we're going to change policies of how we approach those, it's going to deal with the fee schedule. So understanding any structural changes that are happening to that policy on the same night that we're also approving the fee schedule, and then you can decide whether or not that makes sense. For the Heritage Theater maintenance and enhancements projects, with the lack of a building maintenance supervisor, these are just projects that we have to table until we have adequate staffing in that division to kind of take those projects on. So that will get pushed forward. And the 3-year action plan to support age-friendly cities. This one's a little confusing. It's a 3-year action plan that spans over a 5-year period. So the renewal of this will happen in actually the end of fiscal 22. And so that will be brought back to council during that time to decide whether or not we want to continue with that initiative. That concludes my update, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, I have a question. Brian, maybe to you also. I thought the CIC grant programs were on hold. We're not awarding the money, are we?
That is correct.
Okay. So is that the beautification grant and the neighborhood grants?
My understanding was developing new criteria for both of those programs and kind of outlining it a little bit more clearly for the commissioners.
But the whole process is on hold right now, correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Any other questions? Council member, or I keep calling you council member, sorry, Liz?
Is there anything related to the Heritage Theater maintenance or any other maintenance issue around the city that I'm going to say is at risk? Starting with the comment, Heritage Theater maintenance and enhancement. Is there anything at risk that's because it's quote unquote not going forward because the staffing position isn't there?
Not at this time. We've addressed the critical issues. We have a pretty detailed equipment and like building schedule for that building, and the things that are kind of critical to functioning have been addressed. There are some, soundboard is one of the things that is on the upcoming year to be replaced, and it's a pretty hefty price tag, but there's the Preservation and Enhancement Fund that would be funding that purchase. But again, in light of what's going on, those types of purchases, even though that they've been recommended per the schedule, we're probably holding on until we determine what's the best use for that building moving forward.
Thank you for that. This is a backward question, but later on, we may also want to discuss any building maintenance issues that the vacancy of the maintenance staff, which I think falls under Public Works.
That's correct.
So, and we may want to come back and visit what work is or isn't done with that staffing vacancy. That's just on Brian's list, if I may.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands waving at me. Are we now down to development projects, Brian?
Yeah, development projects, there's just a schedule of development projects that come through. I don't think that we need to follow up on those. They were just scheduled on projects that have already been completed and came before the council.
Okay. So I have a request. I don't know how we do this, Cecil, but we've been on the phone now an hour and a half. We're at I think a little point where maybe we can take a couple-minute break. I got to check on my mom real quick.
So why don't we is 5 minutes appropriate?
Yeah, and so what do we do? Just stay on hold, put us on mute? And
yeah, just turn off your video if you choose to, and then we'll be back. It's 2:24 now. We'll say be back at 2:30.
Yeah, that sounds good. Is that good with everybody? Enough time? Okay, so everybody mute, and if you want, turn your video off.
Very good. for the cash, Ben. Thanks for the cash.
Someone's not on speaker, or they're not on mute.
Okay.
All right, Cecil, I think we're going to share screen with Will's PowerPoint for the next section.
Correct. And I'll
Before, hang on real
take
quick,
over the
Brian.
screen. No
Sorry,
problem.
Will.
Oh, no, it's okay, Mayor. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I just, what about the water tower, Brian? Did we get that resolved?
I don't have any additional updates at this point. We are trying to work on accelerating the install of the new equipment, but I'll get an update for you.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, Will, go ahead.
All right, so are we all here again? Let me just make sure everyone's on again. So Mayor, Vice Mayor, Liz, Rich, and Paul.
I think we're good.
Yes, okay. All right, so I will just share my screen, and I will pull up a PowerPoint, just to help to frame and to guide the discussion. So just give me 1 second on that, and I will pull up my screen.
So is this going to be the documents that we already have? Is there going to be any of the attachments we have?
So I will go through attachments C through I.
Okay.
But I can't seem to share my screen. Hazel,
Okay.
can you give me the co-hosting?
Okay, try it now. Try it now, Will.
Okay, let me try again. Okay. All right, just give me 1 second there. And are you all able to see the screen?
Yes, looks good, Will.
Okay. So I won't go through the first a couple of slides. We did do an overview of a day, and then we just went through the work plan updates as well. So I'll go on to the next slide to discuss the budget correction strategies for 1920. We discussed these ideas and concepts a bit last Tuesday. During the council meeting of April the 21st. But I was hoping to take some time today to go through the strategies for both 1920 and 2021 in a bit more detail, and also get council's continued input, so that when we return to a council on May the 22nd with a proposed a budget and a proposed a capital plan, that it will take into account both the budget actions that the council would want staff to pursue in 1920, and also the budget corrections and adjustments that the council would like staff to incorporate for 2021 as well. So if you pull up attachment C, it gives them a costing in 1920 of the different concepts, and it also gives a description of each idea, and also if a custom basis is able to be determined at this time, it also gives the basis of that. So I'm go through a couple of them slides. If there are any questions or comments on the specific budget correction ideas for 1920, feel free to raise your hand or jump in. But I'll also get to some questions at the end of this particular section, that will also allow the council to give input and that address a couple of key questions that were raised last Tuesday, but also some questions that would be helpful for staff to know when we're putting together the proposed budget and the proposed capital plan. So I'll continue.
Okay, hang on a second.
But I'll also allow a council input as well.
Okay, hang on, Will. I have a question and Liz has a question. If I'm looking at the chart, limited hiring freeze under building maintenance supervisor, it says affected 11/29/20. Is that a typo?
It is.
Okay, so it's already effective.
It is. So
okay.
I meant to put down a 2019 under that particular position, but the costing is correct. It was a typo.
Okay, just checking. And then I see Liz has a hand up. Is that Todd? Do you have your hand up, Todd? No, Liz first then.
So Will, I appreciate the information in attachment C that you've given us on the separation of the 2019 and 2020 versus the 2020 and 21. I'm not sure we to go through these slides in detail because we have covered this before, and you have additional details in the material.
Mhm.
From my perspective, what I'm looking to do is have a discussion specifically on things like how are we going to actually get ourselves down to where we need to go. So one, we need to agree on what we're trying to get down to, what the cuts have to be. And then I would say that there's a column, the first item is A, limited hiring freeze. I think we need a discussion amongst the council members as to whether we agree these are the right positions to freeze or not. Because I would like, that's where I have some input that I'd like to provide. So
Okay, and Liz, staff,
discussion.
we have a executive session after this regarding staff. So that might be the.
Okay, I'm just,
Yeah, so Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but Brian, the staff discussion is at the end after we go over all the budget.
so.
Yeah, we were hoping to do in the open study sessions, talk about the general goals that we're trying to achieve and the general targets and the details of that and how we get to those targets are probably more of the closed session discussions.
So do we answer Liz's, do we get into Liz's question now about freezing positions, or we wait?
I think we'll note that that's something that we need to go through probably on all these strategies, but to talk about what people are comfortable with is part of the solution. Whether these are the positions or not can be more of a specific discussion in closed session, but specifically whether some sort of limited hiring freeze is part of that solution, it would be helpful to have now. And if we could articulate what piece of that, is it 20%, 30%? We may not be able to get to that, but that would be ideal with some of these. If we could say, for instance, with the reserve, we don't see the reserve being used at all, or we see the reserve being 20% of the solution. How we do that from staffing positions and how we deal with labor is part of the executive session.
Okay.
So, I'm agreeing with that, but I think there are strategies that are not on the list here that need to be discussed. I'd rather have a nitty-gritty discussion of the strategies than ask Will, in deference to time, then rather than have Will explain what we have and have read.
And so I can adjust a bit and stuff here. And I did expect also to go through a couple of questions and stuff here. I think that the council's hit on a couple of the key questions. It's also questions that came from a staff that will help us to address both the current year and also the upcoming year. So at the pleasure of a council, I can also just go into the key questions. I put them up on the screen. You do got all the attachments of C through I that give you the details of our proposed adjustment approach. If there are any particular questions on those, I will certainly address them. But in the interest of time, we also can just go into the key questions and topics to address, and they're again on the screen now.
So if the mayor's pleasure, I would be supportive of having each council member respond to those questions.
And what I'll do is, I also was going to put them up on a screen and take notes, so that we're able to ensure that we capture it all. Okay.
Okay.
The pleasure of the mayor.
Yeah, I agree that we should start asking council members. I don't know if you want to just go through each strategy or have each council person comment on all at once. Should we just start with B or A?
Or answer his questions.
Okay, do you want to go with your first question?
Okay, just give me 1 second. Are you able to see? Are you able to see the questions on the screen right now?
There you go.
Zoom, yeah, keep zooming in.
Okay. All right. So I've again put the proposed a budget correction approaches for a 1920 into attachment C. If there are any questions on staff's proposed ideas, I can address those. But also, are there any other ideas for the current year in 1920 that council would like the staff to consider as well? And we can just go around the chat room.
Okay, so we're going to go in the order of which we vote. So that would be Rich, Ann, Paul, Liz, and myself. So Rich, you're first. Rich, are you on? You're on mute.
So I don't quite understand what this sounds a little detailed for me and not so policy oriented. So I will listen to everybody else and maybe I'll have comments.
So you have no other strategies that you would like considered? That's the question we're on right now.
I'm not even sure what you'd have to list what strategies are up here, right? What's on the board right now?
So what we have are, we're on the pages of the attachment C. The strategies are A. Let's just go through this. A is limited hiring freeze, which Liz talked about a little. B is release all temporary part-time employees. C is use of employee accrued time. D is use of general plan funds. E is FEMA loans. F is restriction of expenditures only to those that are essential. And that's the pages
Yeah.
1 through 5 in the attachment C. The green header is the strategies we have currently.
Correction, if I may. It's not general plan, it's use of general fund emergency reserve, not general.
I'm sorry, you're right. Okay, but it basically go to attachment C, pages 1 through 5 or 1 through 4. The green bar is the topic. So again, limited hiring freeze, release of temporary part-time employees, use of employee accrued leave time, use of general fund emergency reserve, FEMA, community disaster loan program, and restriction of expenditures to only those that are essential. So if you want to pass, Rich, we'll go to Council Bybee.
So I have a question first regarding the limited hiring freeze chart that's on the schedule. And according to the estimated cost savings by year end? Is that fiscal year end or is that calendar year end? The 1.18.
So it would be by the end of June. So by the end of the fiscal year, and it takes into account it takes into account when the jobs became open.
Is that your only question? And do you have any other strategies that you would like us to be considering?
I didn't understand. Will broke up in his answer to my question. I want to know what the year end means. Is that the fiscal year end, June 30th, or is it December 31st? What is that the savings?
He said the fiscal year.
Correct.
So as of June 30th, we'll have 1.18 million savings from these positions.
Yes.
Okay.
So if we were to keep every job open that's on the vacant list, and they were to be kept open through the end of June of 2020, then we could expect to save a 1.18 million for the fiscal year 19-20.
Okay, thank you. So I would support the limited hiring freeze for these positions through June 30th to accomplish that amount of cost savings. However, I think that the positions on the list do need to be evaluated, whether or not they need to continue to be frozen, because I don't agree that all of them should remain to be frozen.
Okay, so let's go back to what the question on his is are there any other strategies? Okay, just
if I may, I'd like to continue.
Sorry, go ahead.
The next part of it would be, I think there need to be some service level reductions that need to be evaluated and be brought back to council, as far as what are the current services, what are mandatory, what are essential, what are discretionary, and the council to evaluate alternative positions that may need to be frozen or probably frozen at that point. So that would be one thing that I would, one strategy that I'd like to be considered. I also think that we need to, and I said that at the last meeting, we really need to look at our expenditures and make sure that we are not spending on anything that is other than essential items at this point. I would support the discussion of furloughs versus layoffs as far as a cost containment. I think that answers it for the strategies.
Okay, Rich, I see you waving your hand.
Oh, sorry, are you done? Sorry.
No, I'm sorry, there's a lag. I should not interrupt so quickly, sorry.
Am I supposed to answer all the questions?
We're starting with the strategies to add any other strategies. So you've mentioned service level reduction and furloughs versus layoffs. And we'll go through each question through each council. So Rich, okay. I saw your hand back up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt if I'm doing that to anybody here. I'm back, I guess, with Ann's question. So if we're just talking fiscal year ending June 30th, I mean, we're almost at May 1st, a couple of days, 2 days from now, 3 days from now. So that's 60 days. I mean, there's not a lot we're going to do to change things in 60 days. No matter what we do here, that's going to be next fiscal year, I would imagine. I don't know, Will, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, even if whatever we do at the most extreme, I can't imagine anything being done before June 30th.
So I mean, we we can take the steps to contain our current costs, and to ensure that we're only purchasing items that are essential right now through the end of June. A thing that we also need to do as well internally is that we do got a number of open POs and a number of open in encumbrance items. So I'll be working with all departments to go through their open in encumbrance items by the in the current year to see if there are any of those that could be closed out, and to ensure that we return as much of funds as we can to the general fund, and that we don't spend on any item right now through the end of June and also into the future that isn't truly essential. So there are some steps that we can take up front to get ahead of the curve. Anything in regards to labor issues are topics that are best discussed in the closed session, and any of those types of actions, they do indeed take time to put into place, and they likely it would be difficult to put any of those types of actions in place by the end of June. But we will go through those types of discussions as well in the closed session.
Okay, this thing we're doing right now, to me, seems a little silly to separate into this fiscal year, or 60 days left, versus the next 6 months or the next year. Why do we want to go through this twice? I can't imagine anyone's goals are going to change a whole lot here. Certainly when you're talking, we get in this world thing in strategy of section F of essential, and I think that's the one that the council, if we're going to look at, needs to get into that next level. I mean, if we start talking about it, I know people are going to get upset if we say, do we really need A or do we really need B in the city? Forgetting about people, just besides non-essential, and I've talked to Brian about this and others, what we would call essential things that the city needs to deliver, can some of these other things be furloughed for a while? And that's the only thing I would add to it. Thank you.
Okay, next is Paul Resnikoff. You're on me. Oh, there you go.
No, I'm just on mute. I had to get it back on my screen. It was my mute button was wrong. Give me 1 second here. Okay. We're talking just right now the strategies for this fiscal year, correct?
Correct, Paul.
Okay, thank you. So I support the freeze, and I have a question on that. So in general, a freeze, we're talking just this fiscal year. The question I have is on the bottom three, the police officers. So my concern about that one is a concern of mitigation. So the concern is those positions could be hired now. We don't even see a benefit for 12 months or more, sometimes beyond that. So we have to be careful about not hiring in that area because it just pushes out that much further. You can't just turn around and have somebody on board, right? So if we lose all that training and field time in academy, it's a problem. What I'm wondering, Will, is This 215,000 per person, that seems high from hirings we've done in the past. Is that for a certain level officer, a lateral transfer, for example, versus a recruit that would come in through the academy and is the lowest pay, best pension level for the city?
So the cost that you see what it's very a top step a PERS tier 2
Okay.
and anytime that I project out a payroll cost, I try to go at the high end, just so that we are able to take into account the full costing of potential. But if we were to hire a recruit that would come out of the academy, it could be at a step less than a top step, and also in a PERS, it would either be at a PERS a tier 2 or also a PERS tier of 3 a PEPRA. So I expect that those costs could be less, but you're seeing the full potential cost. And if a Chief Alberg, if you've got any other comments that you would also want to share here.
I would agree with Council Member Reznikoff's statement about the delayed benefit of hiring an officer. The hiring process that we're going through right now consists of all entry-level recruit that would require the need to go to the police academy. So I think that would be, as Will mentioned, in that lower tier amount. So my assumption is if we're allowed to continue hiring for these 3 positions, which I hope we will have that option, then I don't believe that 215 number would apply.
Okay. So comment. And if it doesn't apply, then the savings of not doing it are lower. So I guess my concern is, I remember 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we were probably at least 4, maybe more officers down. It took a long time to catch up and go ahead. That's what worries me on this list. That being said, separate from the police officers, which it sounds like we could potentially hire at a lower entry level and save money, the other positions, I don't see any reason that any of these positions would have to start this quarter. Even if you wanted to go ahead and hire them, there's no reason in May and June we have to have somebody on board in these positions at these levels. So I would support the hiring freeze fully right now, with the look at finding the actual numbers of entry level officers. And I hate to lose 12 months or more and then start down the road and then we're 12 months more out, because history says we lose people to injuries and things like that we can't anticipate. So that's my comment on the freeze. I think in strategy B, we've already released the temporary part-timers, have we not, Brian?
Correct.
Sorry?
So hang on, Paul. So this is, well, we can get a little more complicated, but right now the question was, do we have any other strategies other than these 6? If you have some other strategy, then we'll go through individually in the strategies.
Okay, I mean, because I have comments on each strategy, okay? So some of them partially or not all, but if you want to just add to it, I agree with what Councilmember Bybee said. There needs to be a look at service levels. It very well may be we have to change things for public works, for example. If we maintain parks 5 days a week, maybe we're maintaining parks 3 days a week now, and then 2 days the next week and alternating, and that's a substantial savings. The other piece of that is it's not really a service level thing, but this maybe ties in with the expenditures. We have, for example, a Heritage Theater that's not going to have an event for some number of months or a year or more. We don't know. There are costs that we have to have that theater that are somewhat irrelevant in the next 12 months because we'll never have a concert there or an act there, right? It's the same question on the museum. If the museum is closed to outside people, we have to look at the expenditures and say, are they essential if just for that period of time? So I think that ties into service levels, and things that we might call essential may not be essential anymore because the facilities are closed. So I want to add those in and discuss those when we hit all of these topics, but I do have comments on some of the others as well that I'd like at least to get to later.
Okay, so Councilmember Vice Mayor Gibbons, I'm sorry. Do you have additional strategies? So the two, right, we have the first edition is service levels.
You don't need to repeat. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm agreeing with both Councilmember Bybee and Councilmember Resnikoff to an extent. I think we need a little clarity on the police officers, but I going forward in the next year, we can have a better discussion of needing to keep those. My concern is that we need to, in adding a new strategy, is we need to relate services to staffing. We're projecting service revenue reduction, which then means service reductions are not required. And how does that transcribe to staffing? So I think we need to have a strategy that correlates revenue, services, and staffing.
Okay.
I think that the other strategy that I would add is that I guess it all comes down to that. I don't know enough about furloughs and layoffs and what the trade-offs for the city is. I think we need more information on that. And I guess the final thing is, I think we need a strategy where each department, okay, let me say this. I am assuming that we have a deficit for the balance of this fiscal year, to answer Councilmember Waterman's question. I understand we have a potential for a $5 million shortfall this fiscal year that must be addressed. I do not support using the reserves, economic reserves for this fiscal year. So I think that's the biggest challenge with looking for new strategies is I don't support the current one. So what I'm saying is I think we have to pick a target of what we're really trying to save. And the strategy would be to have each department given a target, and each department comes up with what they think they can do to meet the target for 2019-20.
Okay. Any more? Okay.
Well, I want to make a comment on that. It's kind of confusing to me. So each department, again, given that we only have 60 days to do it, Vice Mayor, no matter what they're going to come up with, that's going to be next year's adjustments. There's no way we're going to get this all figured out in 60 days, right?
Well, I understand and respect that comment. I have asked the city manager about that, and I am given to understand that some of this is possible in the next 60 days. And it may, and I appreciate it may require an additional meeting.
Hello. Okay. I don't know if this goes to the same thing that Councilmember Resnikoff said, but is there any reduction in expenditures of essential services that could occur?
the question.
Susan, can I?
I'm sorry, my mom was talking on the phone. I had to have her be quiet, so sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
So, yeah, because I think I know where you're going with that. So as an example, what hit me, for example, we would call essential well, probably essential, some of the rec, the soccer fields, the sports leagues and stuff like that. And we've been really supportive of those. But if we find out that they're not held for a year, they're not essential anymore, and we have to say, what is the associated cost? It certainly doesn't mean they can't come back in 3, 6, 9, 12 months, but there may be things that are kind of meaningless expenses now because those activities aren't allowed. And they are somewhat essential. The physical activities are essential, but they may not be viable. So that's kind of what I meant, that service level slash what's changed. The theater is an easy one, because if there's no show at the theater and there are fixed costs, we have to look at how we do that. That's kind of, I think that's where you were going, maybe.
Yeah, I was trying to tie it into what you had said, Paul. So the way I was wording it is, are there any reduction of expenditures in essential services that we could look at? Also, what I want to know is, because of things like enforcement, are there increased costs for essential services that we need to factor in the next 60 days? So that to me was trying to tie in what you were saying.
And these may tie into different expenditures that we might have to do next fiscal year. We'll talk about later.
Yeah.
Changing circumstances may incur new costs that we don't know about.
So
Correct.
Just to support what you and Councilmember Resnikoff just said, that's exactly what I meant by tying revenues. If we don't have revenue coming in, such as renting the fields, how does that relate to staffing, and how does that relate to services?
Agreed.
Same
Agree.
thing.
Agree.
And then it's broken down into essential versus non-essential for next year. I do support looking at the differences between furloughs versus layoffs, and Council Spivey's about the service levels, which also goes to what Liz was saying. So I think that's it. Do you have, Brian, do you have now what you need of the addition of the strategies? Yes, no?
I do. So the thing I also was going to do too is just go through a couple of the other questions. I think that the council's touched upon a couple of those, so we may not need to go through each of them again, but I'll continue to go down. I'll continue to go down the list.
And Will, your screen shows the whole, like the text is small to the picture of the whole screen. I'm having a hard time reading it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so next question.
Okay, let me. So the thing that we're also attempting to determine is that there are a lot of different ideas out there about how to both address the problem in the current year, but also out into the future. So question number 2 was to get the council's a sense of should we concentrate on a particular idea? Should we set a certain percentage to an idea, or also a certain dollar amount? And I think that the council did give us some direction there. But if there is any other detail or direction about a specific amount or a specific percentage that you would like for a certain a budget correction ideas. It's the purpose of question 2.
I don't know that I'm ready enough to give a percentage. I nod of head. Is people ready to talk a percentage, or should we move to is that a yes to do it, or no, have it later? Councilmember Gibbons?
I don't think, from my perspective, I don't think that this is the question to be asked.
Okay, so let's move. What's your next question, Will?
All right. So I've heard from a council that there are different degrees of comfort if we were to dip into our reserves in the current year, but also if we were to dip into the reserves in 2021 as well. So would a council be able to share their comfort in tapping into the reserves based upon a certain percentage, so that it would help to know the other budget correction ideas that we would need to explore and put into to place to fill any gaps.
Okay, so I'm going to start with Rich. So the first question, do you think we should be using our reserves at this point? The second question is, if we do, what percentage of it do you think we should use? And again, we're looking, the first question is regarding this fiscal year. So Rich?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly why we have a reserve, and definitely we should use it. Just what percentage, obviously don't use the whole thing, so 75% sounds like a lot. So for now, again, especially if we're just talking about this fiscal year, 33% I'm sure is okay. And then we're going to have to watch it. I don't want to there'd have to be a better analysis of whether 35, 45, 50 is better.
Anne?
So I would look to cost containment measures to fill the gap and a minimal use of reserves if it's needed.
Percentage-wise, do you have a number?
No.
Okay, so cost containment now and a minimal percentage as possible.
Correct.
Yep, okay. And any other comment? Okay. Okay, sorry. Next is Rich. I'm sorry, Paul.
Yeah, I would love to not have to use them for 2 months. Look, we're going to definitely get into reserves next year, I think, without a doubt. What scares me is this is not a normal recession. We could be in good shape in 6 months or 3 months, or it could be 18 months. We just really don't know. So I have no idea I would like to avoid it if we could for just the 2 months, so that we go into the what I think is going to be the worst of the times with a full reserve. If that's not possible, then it should be minimal. We shouldn't be even looking at 50, 60, 70%, I think. I would look at minimal and try to sit on that money, it's going to be needed in the future. If this thing drags out over 12 months, which it could, we'd be in serious trouble if we suck up our reserves too early. So yes, I agree with Councilmember Waterman. That's what they're there for. I'm looking for a 60-day maybe reprieve so we enter 2020-21 with full resources. And when we get to it, by the way, one way to mitigate that could be the FEMA loans, because that's a way to get relatively cheap money that gives us cash flow and protects us, essentially an extra reserve.
So let me summarize. You're saying try not to use reserves this year because of it, but if we do, as low as possible.
Yeah,
And then,
go ahead.
Oh, I said, okay, so you said try not to use it for now for the next 2 months, but if we do, as low as possible. And then your last comment was the FEMA loans. Is that to try to get for this year?
I think as soon as we can, if the money's cheap enough. I mean, it's not just the our loss of revenues that we may never get. We talked about this before. If sales taxes are allowed to be paid a year out, we have a problem. So that would help. I trust the finance director and city manager to manage these funds. I think the one piece nobody knows is from any previous recession, how long will it take to fill them up? 2009 and 10, we replenished the money as a city very quickly, or relatively quickly. Are we going to do that this time? I have no idea. So I'm a little worried about that.
Okay, Liz.
I agree with what Councilmember Bybee and Resnikoff said. I would concur with all of those points. I understand Councilmember Waterman's comment about reserves are there to be used, but like Councilmember Resnikoff, I am very dubious with all of the material that I've been getting and sharing with staff, that we should not go into 2021 with the reserves low. And I still think council needs to clearly understand how much money we're talking about. And if the starting point is 5 million, we've got to find a way to cut 5 million in the next 2 months. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but if we don't face the reality, then we're not doing what we need to do.
Sorry. Okay, so I agree with Ann, Paul, and Liz regarding trying not to go into next year having used any reserve. I would not even want to see 33%. But what Liz was saying about, okay, but how do we do it in 2 months? And then that goes back to my earlier question of what projects are we still working on that we could be putting on hold, because then that goes into the staff versus services versus programs. So I think that's, does that give you all the answers you need, Will and Brian? For that question.
Thank you, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Susan, can I make one quick comment?
Yes, please, Paul.
No, Liz is right. If it's 5 million, it may not be possible to cut 5 million in 2 months, even though that is the goal. But at least if you go in with that mindset, that will minimize the use of the reserves over 60 days. My belief is it's almost impossible. That's a big number, a huge number. But if we don't think of the reserves as saving us for that, we use the reserves as, hey, we just got a gap that we can't get to. I think that'll minimize the use for 60 days and it'll work out.
What about the support of going and trying to get FEMA loans now? The interest rate's pretty low, isn't it?
Will, are those available? Is that application available now?
So I can continue to check into the hub program. From everything that I understand, it is open, and we are able to apply. The only thing that I will caution on is it will also need to be paid back in the future, and it will restrict our debt capacity in the future, and also what we are able to spend on our day-to-day ops as well.
That would be part of the analysis you would give us, right, to review if it makes sense to do.
Mm-hmm. I would.
And what, okay, yeah, so, okay, I think it's worth looking at just as a resource maybe. Thank you.
I would agree to at least look into it and then have a better understanding of what you just said, Will, about that it impacts our future ability to take out loans.
And one final comment, if I may.
Liz, yeah.
There is CARES money out there that is not going to cities of our size. It is going to the county. And I wanted to know what kind of we're working on to see how we can get some of that money to the county. And if there's a strategy where cities get together to apply for some of that money.
Okay, Will, that gives you enough of that answer? Yes, okay.
In regards to the CARES, and anything that will go to the county, the counties not yet come out with any types of details about how we can apply for the funds that went to the county. But I mean, it's also an option that I agree that we should explore.
Start talking now before it's too late.
Agree.
Do you have other questions for us on the 2019-20? I'm trying to look at your, so are we down to vacancy positions to be filled?
Correct. And we did go through through this a bit. So I don't know if we need to address the question again. But if there is any additional council input about the vacancies that we should or should not fill, then I mean we also can discuss that as well.
Okay, I'll make the comment of I am concerned about the police officer and the time period that it does take to bring on board them. I think the conversation earlier was we can keep moving forward, but then they may not be brought on board. They incur costs till 2021. Was there other council comments on staff? We'll start with Rich.
Oh, no comment.
Okay. No? Councilmember Bybee?
Just that as I stated earlier, I think the council needs additional information as far as service levels and any service level reductions and what positions may be affected before I could prioritize anything.
Okay, Paul?
I'm sorry, so are you talking 60 days or next year now? I missed that.
I was starting with the 60 days. We're going the next, I think after this question, we're going to go into 2021. So this was response to, yeah.
With the exception of the officers, I don't see any reason to hire any positions at all. We bite the bullet for 60 days because that's what happens when we're in a cash flow and crunch. I've been through so many layoffs in high tech. You make do. People do a little more. It's not pleasant, but we're not. The limiting hiring freeze says we're not replacing people who are already gone. It's not the equivalent of reducing people. So I like that. And with the police officers, I think if there's an agreement from the chief that we're going to have entry level, people that are coming in at the best salary level, best pension level, going to the academy. We can't wait too long to do that because it just delays that resource for long. Those I would exempt if we get the cost down.
Okay, Liz?
I just lost my two thoughts here, the vacancies. One is we have to be careful because they're the ones they are now, because I think that's realistic in terms of level of effort and what we can do, because we need to sort out how those positions are going to be, how the work of those positions is going to be accomplished. So for example, maintenance supervisor, who's going to do supervising of the maintenance if we don't have that position? And whoever fills that position, the second point, may have to get a step up because the responsibilities have changed. So I'm cautious of who's going to do the job of the work of the position being eliminated, and whoever does that work, will they require a step up such that the savings isn't quite what we're projecting? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess. Does that, Will, do you have what you needed? So other than council member, or I'm sorry, Paul and I were discussing the police officers. Is that, do we have agreement on that those are the ones that are the only ones that we should move forward with?
No, I will be clear on my mind. I am significantly questioning it for 2021. Clearly, I'm not comfortable eliminating those. I don't believe we have enough information for to make that decision for the next 2 months. So I'm accepting that staff has frozen those, and we'll revisit in 2021.
Okay, Council Member Bybee, Ann, you want to wait till we have more information regarding the officers? Oh,
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
Well, we were discussing staff, and you had said you needed more information on service levels. Then I had made and Paul had made the comment about the police for the next 60 days. And the comment was that we could start looking at the hiring, but not incur the cost till 2021.
Yeah, I mean.
Oh, sorry, it was Ann.
And to me, that would be a budget discussion and approved through the budget that we're going to be adopting in June, if we're going to hire police officers.
So you do not want to start the process now?
If I may offer some clarification on the hiring.
Go ahead, Gary.
For the next 60 days, when we're talking about hiring of a recruit level officer, the next police academy isn't until August of this year. So assuming we have the ability to continue recruitment, there would be no costs incurred for those 3 frozen positions until end of July, beginning of August.
Okay.
But we would need to start that process now?
The recruiting and hiring process takes a significant amount of time because of the background process. And with the delays that our current situation have put us in, I do have concerns about waiting until the end of June, July, because I don't think that would give us enough time to put anybody into the August academy.
Yeah.
Councilmember Rich, I saw you raising your hand.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's why I don't like this 60-day thing. I don't see that in 60 days or even 90 days with everything that's swinging and fluctuating, and the governor has a report date today that sometime in June something's going to happen, that anything's going to do much. We have to make a decision. It's more to me a policy decision than a strict budget decision. So we have to decide on priorities for at least the next 6 months to a year in this meeting, to sit there and talking, let's wait until June or July or next month or 3 months to make a budget decision about hiring. I think is a fatal mistake right now.
Liz?
I don't think we're talking about waiting several months to make a decision when we're talking today. So I appreciate the clarification from Chief Burr. My comment was staff's recommendation was to zero out the costs through the end of this fiscal year. So I think that's the way to go. That's not, it's a totally separate question, which Chief Berg answered, which is they can still proceed as long as we're in understanding that there's no cost impact in this fiscal year. And we can talk about the fiscal impact when we get to the 2021 fiscal year.
I would agree, as Gary is, I mean, how much staff time and effort would there be to keep the process moving?
There would be no increased staff time. The process has actually been going on even through the current situation. We've changed our process to have the interviews done online, but we have been moving forward with the assumption that we'll be able to continue the process so that we have the ability to send people to the academy later this year.
Okay. So is there an agreement then that it's okay to keep going forward in the process and then just not incur costs, Councilmember Bybee?
I would just say that I appreciate Chief Berg's clarification of that, and knowing that it is an ongoing process, I would support them moving forward with the recruitment, but again, it'll be approved in the with the June budget adoption.
Hey, Paul, sorry, Paul, you're okay with the recruitment would continue, but no expenditures of cost right now?
Well, yeah, if I heard that right, yeah, I think you just continue it. And let's not lose time with the people that are in process or the process going on.
Rich? You're on mute, Rich. You agree?
Sorry, I agree.
Okay, Liz?
I agree with Councilmember Bybee. We will discuss going forward with the budget for 2021.
Right, but so Gary and Brian, you're clear, we keep moving forward, just don't spend any more money right now.
We got it.
Okay, is
Thank
that
you.
good on your question?
There's no, I want to be clear that we need more, as Councilmember Bybee just stated, we need to discuss it in terms of services for the 2021 year.
Yes.
Understood.
Okay, Will, is that the end of your questions for this fiscal year?
Correct.
Okay, so now, Brian, we're going into attachment D, is that correct, under desk item, the 2021 budget strategies?
Correct.
And so the
there.
strategies themselves are the same 6 categories. There's 1 or 2 that you have added additional cost to, the temporary employee one and the limit use of the capital improvement reserve. So do we want to start back is there any other strategies to add? I would just say the ones that we did talk about, the service levels, the furloughs versus layoffs, and could there be any reductions of expenditures in essential services, and look at the revenues and services to staffing combined. Brian, is that, do we need to discuss strategies? I think those were the consensus.
I think there was consensus on those, unless there's additional comments.
Liz?
Yeah, so I do think that going forward for the 2021 year, that the strategies that we discussed will inform the information to go to the 2021 budget. I have to say that I believe the only strategy we really should be seriously considering is targeting an amount of money that we need to reduce and asking each department to make their own recommendations, because each department knows what they can and can't do. Each department needs to make their own recommendation on how to reduce their budgets. And we may have to come up a strategy like was done before, where they have, where target is 5 million, 7 million, 10 million, whatever number we pick. But I think for council to take this list of strategies really, we don't know what staff needs to do. This is where staff needs to tell us, knowing they have to cut substantively, we have to be able to say, what do you need to do to do this? And I've said before, it's a combination of revenue, because we don't make money. It's revenue in, service provided, and the end result is what staff is needed to achieve that.
Okay. Anybody else on the strategies? Paul?
I agree. I don't think we are positioned to tell staff where the cuts come from in general. I mean, we there will be a number we have to reach. To divvy it up between departments isn't really fair because a public works budget is not equivalent to.
Well, whatever.
Right. And also something that's smaller in budget, like economic development, might have a lot more importance next year in getting businesses back going than something that's important now. So I would like to look at that. And Brian, you with Will coming back to us and saying, here's our proposal. There is one other comment, Susan, if I can, that I didn't get to make last time. In the strategy of using accrued leave time for people to supplement their hours, it references our annual policy of cashing out. What does that cost us? So that's something I think it's maybe not popular, but looked at. We allow people to cash out so many hours. That's essentially double pay. And we may not be able to do double pay in the next year or so of allowing that. Using it as one thing because that makes them 100%. Working 40 hours and cashing out more, that to me may be problematic if it's costing us a lot annually. So I don't know if that's something we're allowed to look at, but I'd like to know the value of that and maybe altering that policy if need be. That might be a savings where we're paying every year and we shouldn't be in a recession year if that's what we're in.
So, Council Member Resnikoff, we can give you a dollar amount. We did it for that every year, and I think that amounts about 300,000 plus or minus every year. But we could talk about the implementation of how those would work in the executive session.
That's fine, and yeah, okay, I'll leave it at that. But it was just an expense I saw in there that is one of those things that maybe is a benefit that we can't afford for 12 months.
Okay. Are you done, Paul?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Rich, you were waving your hand earlier.
I guess I'll unwave my hand, so thank you.
Unwave your hand, okay, unwave. Ann, do you have any other comment? I don't see Ann turning her, oh, there we go.
Not at this time, thanks.
Okay. All right, so now are we on to item E?
I'm sorry, may
Brian,
I
is that
offer a clarification?
what?
May I offer a clarification? Councilmember Resnikoff made an assumption which was not my intent. He was assuming I was saying make the same cuts across the board. I was not. I agree that the city manager and staff need to come back with a strategy that council can come up with policies about.
Just to clarify, I didn't assume that at all, actually. I threw that in because in case that was just an assumption, well, let's divvy it up. I don't think that's a good strategy, but I didn't hear you say that.
Okay.
So, okay,
right.
That was not my intent. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Okay, so now we're on to E. Is that correct, Brian?
What is the attachment called, the E?
E is the 2021 preliminary proposed CIPR. It is page 18 of the desk item of the 26 pages.
Yeah, so I can pull it also up on the screen and just go through a couple of key items and then also address any council questions on that. So
I
just
see
give me
attachment.
1 second on that, please.
Attachment E, page 18 of the packet of the desk item.
Just 1 second on that.
Well, attachment E is one page only, correct?
Attachment E is one page,
Okay.
CIPR.
Got it.
I know,
Designate, okay.
the labeling
You
is
guys got it?
confusing. 'Cause
I got attachment E, yeah.
it's called desk item 1, attachment C, and then under there's something called attachment
Yeah, so it's attachment E.
E.
You got it now, Rich?
I surrender. Yes.
Okay, all right.
And
Is there
I
any
also,
comment on this?
I
Is
also,
this just a report?
so I also just put it up on the screen. And I gave this to a council because a proposed budget strategy for a 2021 is to reduce to the greatest extent that we can any of our capital projects that are charged against the CIPR. The CIPR comes from the general fund, and it comes from accrued surplus of funds in the general fund over a time. But we would propose that in 2021 that we keep the use of the CIPR low in case we would need in case we would need to transfer any amount of from the CIPR into the general fund again to cover expenses for cash flow purposes. So the recommendation right now is to hold the line in the CIPR and only put in essential projects in 2021 that are urgent.
Okay. Any comments? I don't see any hands waving. Okay, so now we're moving on to item F. The revenue assumptions. Is the page following the one we just talked about?
Yes. So I didn't intend to go through. I didn't intend to go through the assumptions in detail. But if there are any council questions on either attachments on attachments F or a G, I can certainly go through any of the questions.
Okay. I see no hands waving from council. Doesn't look like we have any questions to start with.
May I ask a question?
Liz?
We're talking 2019, 2020, correct?
No, we're into 2021 now.
Okay, so for 2021, I do have comments.
Okay. Real quickly, Brian and Bill, we never got any public comments. Is this a time to ask if we do have comments or to wait till after we're done with all this?
Generally, you need to take your public comments before there's any kind of final action. In this case, there really isn't any final action being taken, but normally, yes, you'd want to do public comments before you close out the meeting rather than at the very end.
Okay, so I would just ask the deputy city clerk, have we received any emails to date, to time?
We have not.
Okay, well, there we go. All right, so we're to questions. Liz, I think we left it with you.
Okay. I sent this information to staff. In terms of additional funding, there is an ABAG LEAP grant for $120,000. There is an urgency to the timing of submitting it. I don't know the status of whether we've submitted for that. It's not a competition. You just submit the paperwork and get the money. As I mentioned last week, Silicon Valley Clean Energy has identified $10 million for assistance. And Campbell, for city governments, it's $5 million. And Campbell's share for 2 different tasks is estimated to be $50,000 to help with planning resilience and $200,000 for project implementation.
So, Vice Mayor Gibbons, with regard to the $120,000 LEAP grant, we do have it scheduled to come to the council, authorize us to apply for that on May 19th.
Okay. Timing is getting tight. It's so just to emphasize, timing is tight. Okay. Second, next things would be, I would like council to consider having a TOT increase on the ballot in November. I appreciate the timing is tight, but it's not undoable. Even if we choose, we are lower than our surroundings. Some are higher, some are about the same as us. We don't have to implement it, have the authority to do it the next between 2020 and 2022 if needed. Otherwise, we have to wait till 2022. So I think putting that on the ballot makes sense. I also think we should actively implement TOT applied to short-term rentals. That could give us as much, my estimate is 200 a year. Who knows, but that's something that most of the cities around us have done now, and I would encourage that. I would put on the potential, and I put this out here only because it's come up in conversation. There has been some request that cities start looking at the utility user taxes. We do not, other cities do. So I just offer that as something to put on the table. On it, the FEMA reimbursement that would go through next year, as well as the CARE funding next year. And that's all revenues. I have some comments on savings. But those are the revenue sources that I came up with.
You did not mention impact fees. Now, adding the TOT to the ballot and short-term rentals and or impact fees goes into the work plan and priorities for next year. And is that, Brian, do we wait till May for that discussion? Or, because I don't know, getting it on the ballot, we'd have to do stuff by July, right?
So I'm just putting, we're talking about revenues. So I'm just identifying additional revenue. We have got more discussion, I understand, but I'm just putting it on there as potential revenue.
Okay. Brian, you're good with that?
Yes.
And so impact fees also, if we're going to list wish list or other projects. Okay, so now we're on to.
Question.
Yeah, Paul.
So I'm a little confused, but what are we doing with this list? I mean, this list is coming back to us, Brian, or what? I mean, it's a wish list. I get that. But what is the intent of this list?
Are you talking about attachment G, or are you talking about?
I'm talking about if we're going, at some point, if we're talking about TOT and things like that, I'm a little confused of what we're doing with those topics now.
Well, that's what I tried to say is, but Liz mentioned potential revenue sources.
No,
My comment was that is to be part of our work plan for next year and priorities. So that part of it, what are our priorities is for the May meeting, correct, Brian? Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
This will be, I was going to ask Brian, this will be, you're saying, Brian, that this would be for a May meeting as potential revenue enhancements or within the bigger discussion?
Yeah, we're asking for feedback now on those, on priorities and work plan items, understanding that the council is going to want us to take those, come up with some discussion on service levels and how that impacts service levels and what those actual work plans would look like. And that will be presented to you on May 20th.
Let me ask this if I can, Susan. Does it make sense for staff to spend time on stuff like that if there isn't a consensus on council that those are topics we want to spend on? I mean, for me, I'm not going to be in favor of increasing fees and taxes in the middle as we enter a recession. I think it's the worst possible time to do it. And short-staffed, adding more things on a ballot is even worse. So I don't like the timing, but if we don't have a consensus that this is a topic, do we want staff to then be analyzing these things? So I'm confused with the process.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at is, do we do that now? There's some couple slides left in here. I don't know that we have to go through in detail the general fund reserve. There's some assumption categories. So I'm trying to figure out on our order of what we're talking about. So Liz's comment was a way to increase the revenue. My comment was, well, is that not the conversation yet? And I do agree we need to approve or agree on what we would want staff to spend time on, even to get us to the budget. I saw Rich waving his hand as you have comment.
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I obviously agree with Paul on that. I think it's a dangerous time to be talking about, we're going to be wanting to get businesses moving and starting to talk about certainly impact fees, TOT taxes, and again, it's going to take some analysis. This just doesn't seem the time or the place to even be thinking about this right now. Even if it's as high as what the vice mayor was saying, it's a few $100,000, let's say a year, and I'm very doubtful of that on the TOT tax, because I'd still like to see some backup of that. The hotels are certainly not getting filled right now, and I think that's going to take a while. That may take a long while before people start using hotels, for example, because the old days where somebody would jump on a plane in 5 seconds for their business meeting are gone, and I just don't see any numbers to back up this. That Airbnb is using it. I know we've had this discussion a lot, but I would be very surprised if it's as much as we say, and even if it is several $100,000 for all the work we're going to have to focus on to get it passed. I mean, look at what it took for Measure O and how many meetings we had for Measure O to get that on the ballot, and then after that to get it passed. It's a lot of work to get one of these things on there. That just sounds like a huge amount of work right now that we don't need. Thank you.
Okay. Anne?
So I also concur with what Paul and Rich said. I don't really think that this is the right time to be putting a ballot measure on. There's a lot of work that goes into that. Usually it involves a polling and to see how well it's going to do and that type of thing. With the economic climate, I just don't think it's the right time. I'm also wondering if we even should be bringing forth our annual business license fee increase, even though it's usually a nominal amount, given that we have a lot of mom and pop businesses that may not be able to afford an increase. They may not even be able to come back from this pandemic. So I would really tread lightly and be cognizant of the current economic environment and be sensitive to imposing new fees or additional fees at this time.
And I agree. I don't think we should raise any fees across the board, even if it's $10 on the license fee or whatever it was. I do not support any fee increases for anything right now. And if we need to adjust it 6 months from now, but I don't want to see any. So I agree with all three of you guys. Liz?
So I think that's a fine discussion, and I don't dispute, anyone's concerns at all. I offered the TOT for 2 reasons. One is, in general, people pass the TOT because it's other people paying the tax, not themselves. So that's one of the positives about TOT. TOT taxes typically pass a little bit of effort. If this isn't the right time, so be it. But I think it's relevant to ask these tough questions, and this one in particular, because it's another 2 years before we can. That's why we do not have to go to the voters for implementing the TOT on the housing, what do you call it, transient
Short-term.
Short-term housing things. That can be done by council action, and we can later on as we feel necessary. Again, this is one of those things that I think is important to have on the back, in the back of our minds, because we are going to need new revenue sources, and we want to do it in a way that I agree totally doesn't put penalties or additional burdens on our businesses and so forth. So I would be supportive of freezing the increases to business licenses and other types of things. So, but perhaps this is where we need to have before another council meeting to help with, I'm going to call it policy items like this. I don't know. I'm just thinking what's the best way to handle it as Member Resnick presents.
Okay. All right, so it's now 4 o'clock. Do we have any other budget discussion? Will, this is to you, Brian and Will. Do you have everything you had wanted from us? And then do we now go into closed session? So I'm kind of trying to figure out where we're at. Brian?
Yes, I think that we've got some good direction to start preparing for some service plan proposal and our work plans, and we'll bring those back to you on May 22nd, and some good input on future questions that we would have.
You cut out, Brian. You went to mute.
Sorry.
Did you mean
I
to
muted
mute?
myself again. So I think we have enough information to prepare for May 22nd for some additional discussion. We appreciate the discussion of the council and the direction. I think unless, Will, you need more information, I think now would be a good time to go ahead and adjourn to closed session.
Okay, let me just,
Okay. Thank you.
one last comment. Wasn't this also to talk about priority and strategic planning? Or is that now only going to be on May 22nd or a meeting before that?
We will take the input from the council and with the priorities that we have going forward and carry those forward. I think it sounds like the council wants to have a stronger feeling for a service plan and how that's going to be affected by service. And so we'll bring that back on May 22nd.
Do we, I was hoping we would have a meeting before May 22nd. Are we won't have one between the 4th and the 22nd?
We're actually potentially going to have a couple of special meetings between now and then for some other issues that you and I discussed. So if we're ready, it's just a matter of preparing this. There's a lot of work to be done to carry this forward and how quickly we can do that. So if that's possible, we'll do that as well.
Okay. All right. So it is 4:01.
Can I make a couple of final comments, please?
Liz?
Okay. So I just wanted to offer that one of the costs that I have mentioned to the city manager that is a concern, if we do have to pay or have to provide 80 hours of special leave to all employees, now that the extension has gone, the shutdown extension has gone to the end of May, it is possible that we will need to budget additional money for those 80 hours to allow for staff to have those. So I just want to mention that that could be an additional cost that isn't in the current calculations.
Okay. So at this point, this meeting's adjourned. Cecil, do we call in on a different number for the second part?
No, we're going to keep you on this meeting. I'm going to stop the streaming now.
Well, before we do that, I need to announce that we will be convening an executive session pursuant to item D on this evening's agenda. Although there's no final action anticipated to be taken, if there were, it would be announced immediately or made public immediately thereafter.
Okay, so we're going to take a little break first, right, for a couple minutes, and then Cecil, you're going to get rid of whoever we don't, I'm sorry, we're going to leave it down to just the council and Brian
Correct.
and Bill, is that?
It will be, I've got the controls here, so I can remove the